Okay, now we're going to learn a little bit about how to work with OpenRefine, which is a data cleaning software that you can install for free on your computer. It used to be called Google Refine, but then they released it as an open access tool, which is now OpenRefine. OpenRefine is utilized in your browser. So you'll want to make sure to have the background function, the background software running. You can minimize it if you need to, just don't close it out. And then you'll go to this address on your browser, or you can open the executable file on your computer to OpenRefine. I'm going to show how to make tidy data in OpenRefine. So we're not going to be focused on cleaning, we'll be focused on the structure of our data sets. I'll be using two data sets. The first one is globe birth weight and number by country on the globe. This is by the World Health Organization. I am going to save it to my computer by following these steps, which is to right click, save link. And I'm going to call it data globe. I also have this other data set also from the World Health Organization, which is the mean BMI among adults by country. So as you can see, our shared quality for our rows are going to be country. They'll also be year later on when we get to joining those two tables. But here's what it looks like downloaded. I'm going to save it to my downloads, and I'm going to call it data-BMI. I've already saved it. So I will save. I'll go ahead and override it since I've already saved it before. And it's always important to open your data sets and make sure you understand them. So I've already opened this one. I'm going to open the other one. So here's our low birth weight data. As you can see, it's already in tidy format. So we're going to do a lot less to this one than we will to this mess right here. It's messy. So as you can see, our data are already in columns. Here is the kind of the estimate. Here's the low end of the standard deviation. Here's the high end. And then here's them all three together. So you can see that kind of right here where this one ranges from 0.3 to oh, I'm sorry. This is the estimate. This is the lower end. This is the high end. So you can see that here, 0.4 is the estimate. The low end of the standard deviation is 0.3 and the high end is 0.6. All of them together in one column. You can see that notated here. Obviously, we're going to be interested in this one, fact value numeric, since that has our kind of estimate already in there. Another column we might be interested in is the year, which is called period. Just to double check my data, sometimes I like to filter. I'll turn on the filter function. This one says year. It looks like year, but instead of like scrolling all the way through and watching with my eyes, I can use the filter to make sure that this column is only years. If not, I would want to filter out all the other types of data that are in there, but since they're all by year, I know I'm good. I can also look at what periods are included. Looks like 2000 to 2020. Cool. I can, filter to only certain years by unchecking these boxes if I wanted to. I can also do that in OpenRefine. All right, so now that I've had a good look at my data and kind of understand what they look like, I know I want to show birth weight by year. I want each row to have birth rate, year, country, and mean BMI, which is going to come from this table. But we're going to start with this table first. As you can see, we have a lot of confusion happening here. So before we get started, there's a little bit of pre-processing I need to do. in order for it to read correctly in OpenRefine. Now this video is going to go very smoothly and perfectly, and you're going to think, she's a data whiz. But this is something that I had to do some trial and error to figure out, which you will probably have to do as well with your data. So if you try a few things and it doesn't work, do not panic. That is normal part of the process. I'm just showing you how to do certain things to help guide the process. So one thing you'll notice is I actually copied this row and I pasted it here to be closer to our data. We want all of our data together in one table. So 4 and going down are our data. These are not useful, so we won't be using those rows since they're the same all the way through. And so first, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to unmerge these columns. So you can see here, 2016 spans across column B, C, and D. Merge columns can never work. So first thing we're going to do is unmerge all of these columns. And you'll notice there's a lot of empty cells here, which unfortunately OpenRefine's not going to be able to read. So the first thing is we want to give this a heading. These are the countries, right? So our heading is going to be country. Later, we're going to do a little bit of cleaning, but we need to know the year and the sexes that were considered for this data. So I'm going to need to copy all of these years into these empty cells. So these all three should say 2016. These all three should say 2015, and so on. The fastest way to do that without having to do that manually is to select that row. And then you're going to open the go-to menu by hitting Control G on your computer. And it's going to say, okay, where do you want me to go? In this case, we want to go to our blanks, which are found under our special characters. So we're going to click special, and then we're going to choose blank. So it's going to search for all the blanks in this row. Okay? All right, now, so it's going to take us to our first blank, and it's going to tell us, what do you want? So I want it to equal, and I'm going to hit to the left, yes, to the left on my keyboard, which is B4. So I want it to equal what is on its left. So I'm going to say, I want all of my cells to equal, anything that's blank should equal something that is on its left. Now, if I hit enter right now, that's not going to be the right thing because that's actually going to just submit what I just did. I'm going to want to hit Control Enter, which will copy this formula to all of our blank cells across this row. So I'm going to hit Control on my computer and Enter, and now you'll see that this whole column is completely filled in, and now we have kind of more complete information to submit to OpenRefine. So I'm going to hit Control S to save my data-bmi. If you wanted to, you could have saved that as a new name, data-bmi v2 for version 2, if you are versioning your data. Okay, now that we have pre-processed our data set, we're going to go ahead and open our file. And I'm going to start with the low birth weight, actually. We're going to go ahead and open that one since there's not too much that we need to do, but we do need to make it into a project in order for it to save along with our in order to join it with our other data set. So I'm going to call it data WHO underscore LBW, low birth weight. It's pretty much good as it is. So I've mentioned already that it's the cleaning data set. So we're going to go ahead and create the project. And OpenRefine automatically saves, so it's already in there as a project. I can click the icon and it'll take me back to the starter project page. If I hit open project, you can see my project has been saved there. Data-WHO underscore LBW is there. I can open it in a new tab and be back on it. But we're going to go ahead and create a project for our BMI data set, which is where we're going to do most of our work. Now, you'll kind of see that a project is different than your like spreadsheet file, in that the project is actually keeping track of the changes that you've made, the edits that you've made in your data set. And you can always go back to the project, undo things, redo things, make slight changes. So it's really helpful to save projects. They're totally different than saving the kind of final file that you're using. And you'll see that when we work through this BMI data set. So we'll hit choose file. We'll open our BMI data set. We'll go ahead and hit next. And as you can see, it has a lot of those junk rows here at the top, which we're not going to use. It automatically goes and reads the first line as a header. So this is actually our first row of data, which if you recall was our years again. We copied them down here and made sure they were in each row down here. So we're going to use this one, which means we need to ignore 1, 2, 3 rows in our data set. So we're going to check the box to ignore the first 3 rows. And this is just the preview page. So it's going to give you a preview of your data set. It's not showing you the whole thing, but it's just showing you, okay, how do you want me to read it in to your project? So it's already doing a lot by kind of doing some cleaning for us. We've already decided, okay, erase those non-useful rows for analyzing our data. And then it's got kind of our data in 2 rows here. So we want to put those 2 rows together. So parse the next 2 rows as column headers. So I'll just click away in order to get it to make those changes. And now, as you can see, we have the year and the sexes, year and the sex in each column, and then what that BMI is for that country. As you can see, it's still very wide, and we'll go ahead and create this project in order to then convert from wide to long data format. So I'm going to call this data-who underscore BMI, not BMO, BMI. And I'm going to go ahead and create a project. So as you can see right now, it has about 200 rows in it. When I create the project, it's going to read it as 195 because we deleted those first 3 rows at the top, and it also deleted out blank rows. So obviously there weren't that many. Now we're in the actual functioning working part of OpenRefine. Don't panic when you only see 10 rows here. This is just showing you the first 10 rows. You can actually have some options up here if you want to see the first 100 rows and so on. Those rows do exist in your data set. They are there. You can trust what's there because it tells you the number of rows up at the top. So if you're ever confused, those rows are there. You can also go to the undo, redo tab to see any history. So any changes that you make, you can actually undo them. You can go all the way back if you want to, redo them as you want to. It's really nice. We'll see that in a second once we start doing things. So we've done a lot of work already. The last thing we really need to do to get this in tidy format is to get a BMI. Right now they're spread across rows. If you remember the tidy data rules, that is actually breaking one of the rules. So we need to have all of our BMIs in one single column. And you might be like, wow, how do I do that? Look at how many columns are in here. That's why we do things through automated methods rather than doing it manually. So what we're going to use in OpenRefine is called transpose. It's also called transpose. You can actually do this in Tableau as well. And you can do this in programming languages. In R, it's called melt. There might be different names, but the idea is take it from wide data format to long data format. And you'll see what I'm talking about here as I do that. Country is already, all of the countries are already all in their own column, just as nice and tidy as we want it to be. So we're going to work on BMIs, which start from 2016, both sexes. So we'll start there. We'll hit the down arrow. We're going to edit the column, right? Or I'm sorry, we're going to transpose all of these columns. So we want to transpose cells that are across columns into rows, right? So we're going to take it from having lots of columns of BMIs to having lots of rows of BMIs. Now it's asking, okay, where should we start transposing? Again, we don't want to start with country because those were already nice and tidy. We are only looking for all of the columns that have BMIs in them. And that starts with, remember, 2016, both sexes, and then it goes all the way to the last column. All right, so now we know, now the computer knows where we're going to start and end. Now it needs to know, okay, what are we going to name those new columns? So it's giving you a hint here. So that first column is going to be the original column name. So it's going to be the stuff at the top. What is that at the top? Well, it's your year and your sex, right? So that first column is going to have the year and sex, and that value, if you remember, is going to be BMI, right? So we want to have a year and sex column and a BMI column, and we're going to go ahead and transpose all of that information just like that. All of that work done just that quickly. So now you'll see the year and sex for which that BMI came from and the country. But the country names didn't fill down. OpenRefine has a solution for that. You'll hit the down arrow by country. You'll go to edit cells. Oops. And then you're going to choose fill down, and that's going to fill all of the cells down. You might say, did Afghanistan override everything? No, it didn't. I can hit next on here to see through my data, and you can see Algeria has filled in, and all of these countries have filled in. So we are good to go. I've hit first, go back to my first 100 columns, and now we are now in a tidy data format. So exciting. There are a few more changes that we want to do though to make this useful and to be able to do our join. So let's make the changes to make it useful first, and then we'll make the changes for our join. We're actually going to make the same changes on this and the low birth weight data set, which was already in tidy data format, because we actually want to match it on both country and year in order to be accurate, right? Okay, now we're going to go ahead and split the column for year and sex so they have their own columns. So we do that by hitting the down arrow, edit column, split into several columns. In between the year and the sex is a space, but you'll notice that both sexes also has a space here. So there's one space, and so we only want 2 columns. So we don't want it to it'll keep making columns every time it sees a space. In order for it not to do that, we're going to specify that we only want 2 columns. So I put my space here, and I've said that I want to split it into 2 columns. Excuse me. The other thing you can do is uncheck this box if you want to keep your originating column. I don't, but if you feel safer keeping the column, just uncheck that box. I'm going to go ahead and keep mine checked, and then I'm going to hit OK. So now use that space to separate these columns out. I'll rename them by hitting the down arrow, edit column, rename this column. So this is just the year now. I'm going to rename this column. This is now sex. And we have it tidy. The last thing we want to do is split the column to get the BMI number out so that it's recognized as a number in our data visualization software, or if you're running an analysis in your analysis software. So we're going to take these standard deviation ranges out. To do that, we'll also do the split by a space, because there's actually only one space in these columns, which is in between. I did realize there are some trailing spaces here, so we'll want to specify that we only want 2 columns. But since there's a great separator here, I'm going to use that to my advantage. So I'll split into several columns. Again, we're going to use that space. If it were underscore, we would use that. If it were comma, we would use that. If it were 2 spaces, we could type that, but in this case, I'm typing 1 space. Again, I only want 2 columns, just the BMI and the standard deviation. So then we'll hit OK. Rename these columns again. Actually, I call this BMI estimate. or me. And then I'll rename this one. The standard deviation range. Okay, now we've split up columns that should not be together. We know that works because look, this is now green, which means OpenRefine is recognizing that as a number, which is good because we want to be able to see like, is 24 higher than 22 and things like that. All right, the last step is we want to add in low birth weight because let's say we're comparing low birth weight to BMI. So we're going to need to do a join. In order to do a join, we needed to have that project. So we're going to join two projects together. One thing we'll need to do is since there's data by kind of our rows are by both country and year, right? Well, technically they're by country, year, and sex, but we want to append information by country and year on all of these. So that's okay. Both sexes, male and female, will have the same low birth weight number. That's fine. You'll just, when you're making your visualizations, be sure to average for the sex, which means, you know, the average of three of the same number is that number, so that it'll give you an accurate visualization rather than summing all three together. But we'll get to that later. For now, we want to join this on both country and year. In this case, our column for country is called location. So there's countries in here. You can tell the location type are countries. You can use text facet here to double check. Okay, this column, I don't want to scroll all the way down, scroll through all these columns. So I just want to make sure that's actually, yeah, all the location types are country. So we're good. These are all country names. So location is our country. Our year is actually period. Again, it's telling us what our period type is. We can check it, double check it to be sure, but we're going to use the location and period, which will be our country and year. And in order to match these rows, we're going to go ahead and make a new column called country year, which combines them together to make one column. And we're going to check that column against the other column in order to append that data. So to do that, we'll hit the underscore of country, edit column again. This time we're going to join columns. So we want to join country and year. We're going to call it, we'll put an underscore in between the contents. So it'll have a country underscore year. We'll skip nulls. And, okay. Oops, sorry. I just hit back. Edit column, join columns, country and year. We're going to put an underscore again, skip nulls. And we want to make this a new column, sorry, we'll call it just key. What's our key here? And now our key is the country and year together in its own column. We will repeat that exact same step on this one. So I'm going to go to location, add a column, join columns. This one was called location and period. So we're going to join location, period. Make sure to have the exact same separator that you chose before, so because we're going to match the text exactly. So it should say, you know, Angola underscore 2016 in both data sets in order to append that data. We'll skip nulls and we'll write this in a new column called key. All right. Okay, so we have a key here and a key here with the country and year name. All right, so now how do we put these two together? So we are going to distinguish where the data is coming from. It's coming from low birth weight. All we need is the low birth weight. We don't need all this other stuff. Although it is pretty interesting, it has the continent on there, which is actually helpful for visualizations, as well as acronyms also helpful for visualizations, because then you can color things and do, total for all of Europe, right? If you don't have a lot of room, you can just put the acronym as the label on your visualization. So I like to have multiple of the same thing actually in there in different ways. But we're not going to get into that in this video because we're focused on tidying, but that is something helpful to keep in mind. But for now, we are going to stick with this data set, okay? And we're going to use this key to match this key in order to grab this number, fact, value, numeric. So we're going to grab this number by matching it with the key. All right. It's a lot to remember, but play this again if you need to. It's one of those things that kind of helps just to see it a couple times to get a good idea of what we're doing. All right, so we're going to take our key in our BMI data, and we're going to go to edit column, and add a column based on this column. And we're going to use GREL, which is the language that OpenRefine uses for kind of some of these formulas. If you use formulas, if you've ever used formulas in Excel, they always start with an equal sign. And like, let's say you want to add a bunch of numbers up, you would say add 10 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5. And that's a formula in Excel. Well, in OpenRefine, our formulas are using GREL, so they look a little bit different. So in order to look at join a data set first, you need to just tell system, okay, where did that column come from? So first, we're going to get the name of our project, not the name of our data set, the name of our project. Our low birth weight project was called data-WHO_LBW. And so that's what we're going to put in quotes. So the data set that we're looking at is this, right? And then we're going to also specify what column is our matching column, our key column, which I have conveniently named key. So we're going to match on key. I could have called it ABC, and we would write, ABC here, but I called it key, so we're going to call it that. It's not any special language, that's just what I typed in. So that's the column. So here's the originating data set and the originating column. Next, you're going to tell what cell, what is the data? We have lots of columns in here, right? So we know what to match on, but what are we adding here? So in this case, we're going to add the low birth weight, which was under fact, value, numeric, was where our low birth weight information was. So we're going to take that column and we're going to add it to our data set. Now we can also indicate which value to import in the array by saying, okay, import the very first value, which it starts counting from 0 if there were, multiple of the same key, right? I don't think there are, but just in case, we'll go ahead and do that. And it tells you, okay, you type this incorrectly. We can scroll down. They actually don't have data for Afghanistan in here. I can check by going to location and text facet. See, there's no Afghanistan actually in this data set. That's why it's showing a bunch of nulls. But you can see there are other countries in here. So unfortunately, the preview is not very kind of anticlimactic because there's no, our first country showing here is Afghanistan where there's no data. But it's telling us no error. We can always undo if something that goes wrong. But we'll go ahead and name this column. So we'll call it low birth weight value. I'll just call it LBW. Underscore value. And now we have appended this fact value numeric column as LBW value here. And of course, Afghanistan doesn't have any data, but if you scroll in, you can see that the data for the countries that are in that data set now have the low birth weight information for those years. If you want to, you could go ahead and delete this column because we no longer needed it. We just needed it to join those data. And that's how we would clean our data set for making it usable in Tableau by using OpenRefine. And we did a lot. To do that manually would take, I don't know, years. Feels like it would take years. It definitely would take my sanity. So I definitely recommend making use of data cleaning software for cleaning your data. To export the file, you'll just hit export up here. You can export a CSV, Excel file, even some other types of file types. You can even, take it to Google Sheets, do what you'd like. Please remember, your projects are automatically saved. So even if I go back to home, right, I can open this project back up and see what I've done here. So low birth weight value is still here. I can look at the first 500 rows or so and be able to see that there's some numbers in there. And export my data set. I can go to undo, redo, and undo some of the things that I did. I can redo them. And it's really nice because you have control in that way. And then you have a way of cleaning and exporting. So I'll just go ahead and export it as an Excel file. It used the project name to export, and now look, I'm opening it in Excel, and it's nice and ready to go. Thanks for watching.